Okay, here's the thing. My fairy lights behind me are on, but I don't think you can even see them because I think they're broken, which I'm so annoyed about. I bought these on Amazon and like a month after I bought them, they just started getting dimmer and dimmer, so now you can barely even notice them. I don't know, I don't think you can see them at all, but they're on. I'm trying to create the cozy vibes, okay? I got the fairy lights-ish. I got my cute little teddy bear. This is Benji. And today we're gonna be talking about winter book recommendations and my winter TBR and also recapping on my fall TBR. So there's a lot going on in today's video, but let's just get right into it. So first I want to talk about the fall TBR. And I made this video a couple months ago, I think at the end of August, for a couple of books that I wanted to hopefully get to. And now that it's the end of November, I can kind of see which ones I did or did not read. Now, I'm a mood reader, so I don't actually stick to TBRs, but I do want to prioritize the books on my TBRs. So, drumroll please, I read 6 out of 11 of the books on my TBR, which actually isn't terrible for me. Like, I didn't think I was going to get that many, to be honest. Just to go down the list. So the 6 books out of the TBR that I did read were Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole, Powerful and Reckless, which are books 1.5 and 2 in the Powerless series by Lauren Roberts, For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten, which is actually a 5-star for me. I loved that book. And then my Clockwork Angel reread that I just did last week, which was also a 5-star, and I also vlogged that process. So those are the 6 books that I did read in fall. The 5 books that I didn't get around to that were on my TBR were My Roommate is a Vampire, Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco, The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Fear the Flames, or like the new published version that I wanted to read, and then Cruel Prince. So that was a recap on my fall TBR. Before we talk about my winter TBR, I want to talk about my book recs for you guys. So I have a list of 10 book recommendations that give me wintry vibes. Now, I don't have any Christmas books on this list because personally I don't read very many like holiday themed books. I'm only listing books that are like vibes of winter, like snowy landscapes, cold atmosphere. So these books are not only just for December, but you can also read them in like January, early February, etc. So let's go down the list. The first one on this list is my favorite book that one of my favorite books that I've read recently that I just mentioned, which is of course For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. You can just tell by the cover, like this is a wintry book. I mean, it's kind of fall and winter. I read this in my fall TBR, so it's kind of like both, but like by the cover, like it's snow, you get the winter vibes from it. Basically, this is a Red Riding Hood retelling. It follows our main character, Rhaedaris, who is a twin sister, or maybe it's a younger sister to her sister Neve. And so the first sister is for the throne, so Neve, who is older, or are they twins? I don't remember. But she gets the throne, she gets the monarchy, and then the younger sister gets sacrificed to the wolf, or this monster in the woods, who ends up not being a monster. He's actually their love interest, and there are just so many interesting parts of this book, talking about like the religion with the priestesses, talking about magic with the woods, and how the wood like takes things from you. Like there is an evil force in this book, and it's not like a person, it's like genuinely like the nature itself, like the trees, the woods, they will like suck the life out of you. Like it's such an interesting concept. So I really enjoyed this. That was beautifully written. There's a romance in this and it was just lovely to read about. So 5 stars for me. This actually hit like every box. I really enjoyed reading this. And if you want something cozy, late fall, early winter vibes, pick this one up. It's so good. Next on the list is also a recent read, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. So this book I read and vlogged and completely annotated, as you can tell. And this was just so good. This is a book that follows 2 sisters, Vianne and Isabel, and it takes place during World War II, so this is a historical fiction book. Now, this has a lot more in it than just wintry vibes. I mean, it takes place over multiple years, so it's multiple seasons in this book, but it follows 2 different sisters and their own unique experiences during the war and how womanhood and sisterhood just made such a big impact in both of their lives throughout the course of World War II. Specifically, this gives me wintry vibes because there's a lot of this book, especially in Vianne's point of view, when she is like staying home and the Nazis have invaded France, and so there is a lot of, you know, food shortages and there are rations and they're just running out of, you know, supplies, and she's stuck at her home and people are like, you know, boarding, the Germans everywhere, that kind of thing. So it's like cold wartime winter kind of vibes. So not like aesthetic fun vibes, but it does feel cold, and also it feels emotionally cold because there's just so much like hardship in this book. So it's not like a happy winter kind of cold vibes, but it correlates in my mind to the winter season. Kristen Hanna is honestly a genius writer and I need to read more by her because this is just incredible. incredible. So pick this one up. Next is a fantasy book, and that is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. So this I also read recently, and I also annotated, although not as much as The Nightingale. This follows 6 main characters who are called the Crows, and they basically band together to do this very big heist. So basically someone wants something, and the leader of the Crows, Kaz, he's a very flawed character, but we love him anyway. And he basically leads the Crows in this giant heist that they're going to do and break into this very high secure place. It's called, I think it's the Ice Palace, Ice Court, Winter Court, one of those combinations. The Ice Court. Okay, I was right. So it's called the Ice Court. So it's basically like somewhere in Norway is like where it's inspired by this like fictional place, somewhere up in like, you know, very north cold Europe kind of vibes. And so it's the Ice Court, right? It's cold, they're wearing furs, it's snowing. There is a lot of wintry vibes in this. And also I just feel like the other places as well, like Ketterdam, which is the city that Kaz lives in, is also just very like dreary and cold. And similar to The Nightingale, it's like emotionally cold as well. This is my first out of 2 Leigh Bardugo books that I've read, and both of them were over 4 stars. So I really love her writing, and I need to read the sequel of this badly, like badly. So I recommend this for the winter. Okay, this next one is a little bit of a stretch, so bear with me, but I'm going to recommend The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This book follows our main character, Addie LaRue, who like 300 years ago made a deal with basically the devil, and she wanted to basically live forever. He kind of manipulated this deal, manipulated her words, and so basically she is living forever. She never dies, but unfortunately every time that she meets someone, they forget about her whenever she leaves. So she could go talk to someone at a restaurant, go to the bathroom, come back, and they would not know who she is. And so obviously this leads to 300 years of extreme loneliness. So it's a very interesting concept. It's very unique. It's very beautifully written. But the reason I'm recommending it for wintertime is because, and this is sad again, it's also, I feel like a lot of these are like winter equals sad, not winter equals cozy warm feelings, which it can. But like I put this in my head with winter because it gives me very much like, this is so depressing. It's like being alone at Christmas. I'm sorry, that's so sad to say, but like it gives me the vibes of being alone at Christmas. Everyone around you has their families, you know, they're having warm, cozy meals around the table, they're thankful for each other, they're giving gifts, and then you're like alone at Christmas. I pray so hard that none of y'all experience that, and like we all have some place to go for the holidays. But if you have experienced that, or you want to read a character who experiences something similar, this is the book, because she doesn't have any family, no one recognizes her, like she's alone every Christmas. So that's so sad. It's really just a heart-wrenching book. So if you want to read something that makes you shed a little tear, I would pick up The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. All right, let's talk about something that's a little bit more upbeat and exciting, and that is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. So obviously by the cover, like this is a wintry book. Hello, they're ice skating and he's a hockey player. This is just a really, really fun romance, and it also gets a lot of like controversy and hate online, but like I enjoyed this book. I thought it was fun. So this follows main characters Nate, who is the hockey player, and then Anastasia, or Stassi I think she goes by, who is the figure skater. And basically the rink at the college gets like destroyed, so these two teams, like the ice skating partners and then the hockey team, have to like share rinks. And then this is a college romance, so there's a lot of other things in this book. It's not just about skating. Like there's stuff about going out, getting drunk, partying, hookup culture, eating disorders, friendships and friendship breakups. There's just a lot in this book, and as a college student I do relate to a lot of this stuff. So I really enjoy how Hannah Grace writes college kids. I mean, I just read the second book in this series a couple weeks ago, and I thought that that was also a really good book. Just like a fun time, you know? And it's also a spicy book if you want something spicy. Like there are some interesting scenes in here. So I read this last December, I think, and it was a really good time. So pick it up, Icebreaker. Next is one of my favorite series from my childhood. I'm sure you guys know what this series I'm about to bring up is because I talk about it all the time on my channel, and that is the Shiver series by Maggie Stiefvater. This is one of the books that I read when I was like 12, 13. I'm obsessed with this series, mostly because it is childhood nostalgia than anything else. Like the writing isn't phenomenal, it's really not, but I still think that the vibes are immaculate and I love this story. So basically in this book, this is a werewolf book, and it is very much early 2010s paranormal romance and very YA. However, I stand by that this is a really good series. It's like similar to Addie LaRue, similar to Nightingale. It's like emotionally cold because the entire time, whether the wolves work in this series, when you become a werewolf, you basically have the hot months like summer as a human, and then the cold months like winter, you're a wolf. And the longer you are a werewolf, the shorter and shorter your summers become. Like you'll change into a wolf earlier in the year so that eventually you're just a wolf all year round, and that's how you are for the rest of your life until you die, right? They're constantly fighting the cold, and so it's very much like atmospheric. Like you want to be warm in this book. It's cold, okay? Look at this cover. It's cold. So I like this series so much. Please pick it up. The Shivers series by Maggie Stiefvater. Okay, so just a couple more left. Next, let's talk about one of my favorite books ever, which is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This book follows 7 theater kids who basically have have been living at this theater academy that focuses on Shakespeare for the entirety of like high school. And one day, one of the 7 turns up dead. So the question is, what happens? And we follow our main character, Oliver, from like, I don't know, 15, 20 years later, and then it flashes back to everything that happens, and you slowly get the story over time of what happened. And not only is it just really interesting to follow the mystery and see like who did it and like what's going on and stuff, because I feel like you actually figure out the mystery pretty soon in the book, but more than that, the relationships between these 7 students is like, it's crazy. There's so much going on. There's so much nuance to their relationships. And then they also perform Shakespeare plays, like I said, and the author is absolutely genius. Emma Rio is absolutely incredible because she uses the Shakespeare plays and them performing these plays to also use that as a metaphor for their relationships, and they communicate through lines of prose and lines of Shakespeare to also communicate their feelings to each other. Like, it's just beautiful. I need to reread this so bad. This is also one that kind of verges on, it could also be autumn, but it could also be winter kind of thing. Like the schooling and academic aesthetic always reminds me of like autumn, because you go back to school in autumn, you know, but also they do a lot of plays around like the holidays. So they'll do like a play before Thanksgiving or before Christmas, and that also gives me wintry vibes. I'd pick this one up. It's an absolute incredible novel. All right, so next is Forever Never by Lucy Score, and I'm actually going to read part of the synopsis on my computer here, but you can tell by the cover alone that this is a wintry book. I mean, come on, the cover, look at it, okay? You don't fall for your brother's high school sweetheart, your boss's daughter, or your ex-wife's best friend, especially when they're all the same woman. So obviously we have quite a dilemma here. So we have our main character, Brick. He has this girl named Remy, who is his brother's high school sweetheart, who he of course used to know whenever he was younger, and then she moved away to a big city. And then she comes back to this small town for reasons that we don't know, or at least I don't think that we know. And it's like a second chance romance, except they never were actually together because, again, she's his brother's high school sweetheart, but they knew each other when they were kids, and so kind of like friends to lovers, and it's like a slow burn kind of thing. And it also has an interesting like mystery at the end of this book. It was like kind of out of the blue, but it was quite something. I mean, the romance was fine, but I recommend this book more for the vibes because it takes place in a small cozy town in north somewhere. I don't know where. Where does it say? Mackinac Island in the dead of winter. I don't know where that is, but somewhere cold, somewhere north. So if you want a romance that gives you that kind of energy, pick up Forever Never by Lucy Score and tell me how you think, because I gave this book 3 stars, but I still recommend it for the vibes. So if you enjoy this book, let me know. And then the last book on the recommendations list is Anastasia by Sophie Lark. Anastasia is a retelling of the story of Anastasia, which if you've watched like the Disney movie or whatever, it follows, of course, the girl Anastasia, who was the daughter of the Russian Tsar, who then got overthrown, I believe, and also like the rumors about Rasputin, however you say his name. But there's a lot of like myth and conspiracy surrounding their story because I think the body of Anastasia was never found, like the real life Anastasia. So anyway, that being said, there've been a lot of like media about this story. So Sophie Lark did her take on this. She rewrote the story in her book Anastasia, and it's interesting because it adds magic and fantasy elements to the story, and I really enjoyed it. So it follows, of course, Anastasia. She was the princess, the daughter of the Tsar, and then she meets this rebel named Damien. And I don't know if this is like historically accurate, but they have this like rebel group called the Cossacks, I think it says, a young Cossack rebel, and they are opposing the monarchy from what I remember. So it's like a forbidden romance, and it's also like a childhood friends to enemies to lovers, I want to say. But I think more than anything else, although this is a fantasy romance, I think there was more political intrigue and fantasy elements to this book than the actual love plot lines. So if you want a better mix of like romance and also like fantasy plot, this would be a fun one to pick up. Really interesting, and I really enjoyed this. So if you want to pick up something historical or at least historically inspired, pick up this one by Sophie Lark. All right, so those are all of the books that I'll recommend for you guys that are kind of giving wintry vibes or cold aesthetics that you guys should definitely read this season. And now I want to talk about the books that are on my personal TBR for winter. For the next like 3 months, these are the books that I want to read. Hopefully I can get to a couple of these, and we'll do a rewrap in the spring and see which ones I actually did get to. But let's just go down the list. So the first one on the list is Six Scorched Roses, which is actually a novella from the Serpent and the Wings of Night series. I read book 1 and 2 in this series in May, and everyone's been raving about the third book that is either about to come out or has come out, and so I want to get to that one. But before I get to that one, I also need to read the novella that takes place, I think, in between the first 2 books. So Six Scorched Roses is the novella. I think it's like 150 pages, so short and sweet. I want to get back into this series and reevaluate my thoughts with it. So Six Scorched Roses I will pick up sometime, or hopefully sometime in the next couple of months. Next is Metal Slinger, and this is a book that I've honestly heard mixed things about, so we'll see what happens. But this is a fantasy book that I think has come out recently, and I got this recommendation from Emmy Rosen, or Emmy Rosen Reads, something like that, on YouTube. She adores this book, and just watching her reaction to reading this like inspired me to read it, so I want to pick this up at some point soon. It's a classic romantasy from what I've heard, but the plot twist at the end is apparently like incredible, so I need to pick this up just so I can understand what the hype is about. I also want to pick up, where is it? Clockwork Prince. I'm actually technically in the middle of this book, but I barely started it. I'm like on page 5, but I just recently reread Clockwork Angel last week and I really loved it, and so I'm picking up Clockwork Prince this week. Again, I've gotten like 5 pages in, so I'm not very far, but I want to reread this because I really enjoy the series. The characters are just so amazing in this series, like Tessa, Jim, and Will. I love them. They have a special place in my heart, and also because I read this series whenever I was like 13, so rereading this is like also nostalgic for me, and I feel like nostalgic reads are the perfect reads to read at the end of the year when you're like wrapping everything up, you know? It just makes sense to me. I also want to read Anathema by Carrie Lake. Now, I know basically nothing about this book, but Heather McClary from Heather Reads put this on her channel, and she said that she was obsessed with this book, so I wanted to pick it up and kind of see what the hype is about. This is definitely a fantasy. Reading off of Goodreads, it says it is a spellbinding gothic dark fantasy about a shunned woman who is forced beyond the mortal realm's forbidden boundary into a terrifying world of cursed souls and grotesque creatures. So honestly, this is one that I probably should have read around Halloween. You know, cursed souls and grotesque creatures is very like creepy Halloween vibes, but nonetheless, I need to get into gothic fantasy more. I feel like I haven't read any gothic fantasy, although I do have one Dark Window on my bookshelf that I haven't actually gotten to yet, but I want to step into Anathema and see what the hype is for this. So this one I'll let you know about whenever I do read it and kind of learn more about what it's about, but genuinely I am super excited about this. Then we have Magnolia Parks 3, A Long Way Home. Now, I've been putting off this series because I read books 1 and 2 I think at the beginning of this year, and I loved them. I gave them both like 4.5 stars. They're just so good, but I never actually moved on to book 3. I'm part just terrified because I hear it's just emotional and absolutely tears your heart into pieces, and also I'm a little annoyed because I don't want to go back into Magnolia's point of view again. I don't know, it's kind of like back and forth. I need to get to this one at some point. Crooked Kingdom, which is the sequel to Six of Crows in the duology, is also my TBR because I read Six of Crows like a month and a half ago and I never picked up the sequel, so I really want to know what happens and just kind of finish out the duology, finish out this series I'm in the middle of. So hopefully I can pick this one up at some point soon. I am intimidated because everyone sobs in this book. I need to just get over it and pick it up because I know it's going to be incredible, and like I said, I love Leigh Bardugo's work. I love her writing, so I know I'm actually going to enjoy this. I just need to like bite the bullet and pick it up. This one should be happening sometime soon. Also on my list is When the Moon Hatched, which I don't remember the author. Something Parker? Yeah, Sarah A. Parker. Ooh, that was good. Okay. When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker is a romantasy that came out, earlier this year, so 2024. It is, however, 718 pages, which is a little intimidating. I do read like big books, but like I don't read many big books. However, this book has gotten a lot of hype. It has like dragons and magic and fantasy and romance, and apparently it's really good, and I want to read it. I've just never gotten around to it, and so this is one that I want to pick up at some point soon. It looks wintry, so I'll let you know how that one goes whenever I do finally pick it up. And then finally, the last book on my TBR for the winter is, of course, Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the 3rd book in the Empyrean series, and I loved Fourth Wing. I gave it 5 stars. I read Iron Flame last year when it came out, and I think I gave it 4 stars. I was a little disappointed by it in some aspects, but I do think that it still kind of held up to just the vibes of Fourth Wing. Like, they are very easy to read romantasy books. It sucks you in, the plot is amazing, you just want to keep reading. So even though I've had a couple of issues with Iron Flame, I do still want to read Onyx Storm, of course, and I want to know what happens after that crazy cliffhanger. But that is on my TBR, and I am so excited to pick it up. I need to know what happens. Like, I need to. And I know that all of BookTok agrees with me on that statement. So with that being said, this is a long video, but that's all I have for you today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, subscribe to my channel. I post every single Thursday if you want more book videos from me. And I will see you guys next week for a new reading vlog. Goodbye.